Hello and welcome to the 2019 season of Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarzik alongside Drew Bonifant. As always, Drew, welcome back to football season.
Another season, getting excited.
Yeah, this is like the 1,000th season I think we've done this show, so we'll try to get it right for the first time. Joining us this week is a frequent guest, Cony head coach BL Lippert. Coach, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's talk first about some of the changes in high school football this year in Maine. First, we have the 8-man league for the first time. And, Drew, we have a team here in central Maine. We have Maranacook who's going to give that a shot.
Yeah, it's they were Class E for the last 2 seasons and pretty competitive in that league. But, their numbers were low. I think they only have 20 kids this year. So when 8-man became a real possibility and then became an actual thing that was happening, they were a good pick for that. It fits their team. They're low on bigger players that would be on the line. They have more of a surplus of kind of skilled players, so they're pretty much built for the 8-man. I know I was talking to Coach Jordan DeMillo over there. He's pretty excited about what the team can accomplish in that level. Yeah,
when I talked to Coach DeMillo in the spring when he took the job, he was pouring himself into watching film from schools from Texas and all over the country to learn it and getting ready to go to some clinics.
Yeah, he made a good point talking about previews. Just because it's the question you always ask by default, like who are the favorites in the league? Who do you think come out of that? And he just said, I don't know. We play. He's like, we play Yarmouth. I don't know anything about them. We play Mount Ararat. I don't know anything about them.
Well, I think that's the same for every team because as they all learn it together, someone's going to have a quicker learning curve and probably jump ahead of the pack, I would think.
He made another good point where it's, he was kind of bouncing back and forth between, on one hand, it's still football. The same principles of football hold up, but there are some differences. One thing he talked about was each position is a little different, tweaked a little different from what it is in 11-man. Cornerbacks have to be more physical because now they're the outside part of the defensive wall. They can in 11-man they're not as crucial in the run contained. In 8-man they're big. They have to play more like safeties. Sure. Linebackers have to play more like safeties, and so everybody has you learn your skill set that you would learn at that position plus something else. So even the Maranacook players are talking about we have to kind of learn football in a different way here.
Everyone has to play like a safety. When I was in high school playing safety, everyone had to play like a linebacker because it would just run the ball.
Right.
Coach, I know you've got a lot of stuff going on with Cony, but have you had a chance to look at any of this 8-man?
I've read some articles. Randy Whitehouse wrote that series down in the Sun Journal and read that. I'm intrigued just to see what it looks like. I've watched a little bit of YouTube, just to see it. It seems like a high-scoring, kind of a little bit more open game. There's a little more room for skill players to make plays. And so it's going to be exciting. The first game's tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, Old Oyster Beach in Telstar?
Yeah. I wish somebody would stream that. I think that'd be kind of cool for a coach. Sure. I can't go down on a Thursday night, but it'd be kind of fun to see that. Kick off the season, the first kind of initial foray into this 8-man. And, I read some people saying it's not real football. It's real football. You're blocking, you're tackling. It's just a little different version of it. And, if your circumstances put you in that situation, then, of course, that's the choice. It's either give up football and play soccer or play 8-man football. I played 2-man football before I played soccer. So, I don't care what it is. 8-man, it's football. And, I want to see what it looks like. I might not be able to see a game. I'm not sure if Munzing's streaming any of those, but until maybe the playoffs, I don't know. But I want to see some of that film and just see what it looks like.
Yeah, that brings us to the next question. Do we think, guys, that this is going to help save these programs?
I think so. I definitely think it's the right move. I got to think that there are some people who were probably intimidated by the idea of coming to play 8-man because they knew if they had to play, or they were intimidated about the process of coming to 11-man because they knew if they had to play 11-man, they might be a lineman and be completely undersized for that. They would just be signing up to get their butt kicked. Now at 8-man, they might be able to play more, get their hands on the ball, play a more skill position that they might be able to be more physically cut out for, and that could increase their enjoyment of the game. So maybe you get more people kind of being less thrown off by football in general or football by itself. And 8-man's going to be a little more welcoming to them and get the numbers back up.
Yeah, because if this doesn't work, we're out of ideas, I think.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how fluid teams are. Like I saw a team photo, I can't remember if it was Gray New Gloucester or somebody that was expecting 20 and they got 28 kids. So if you end up getting back to 30, 32, 35, like are they mandated to go back to 11-man? Or if they find they like it, maybe 28 kids came out because of that, what you just said. I wouldn't play if it was 11-man because we're playing a tougher schedule against whoever. Mm-hmm. Now this is more catered to what I feel like I can play. So we expected 20, we got 28, so now, if you've got 35 kids, 8-man really doesn't make as much sense as it might with 20. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. If it's somebody becomes dominant in 8-man and they get a 45, 50-man roster, the MPA is going to say, well, it's time for 11-man, or they leave you the choice. This year was a choice. You pick what you want to play, and so it does revive your program. Is there a standard set for like when you return to 11-man, and what would the protocols for that be? That's down the line, but that would be something that, as we forecast how this is going to impact the health of football in the state, I think that's a question that they're going to have to grapple with.
Yeah, is it kind of like a relegation in some ways, sure, where it's like, okay, we're playing 8-man but the goal is always to get back to a point where you can play 11-man, or some schools, if 8-man's going to be just an alternative that some teams like to stay with. I mean, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, well, there is that, for lack of a better term, relegation rule now, where if you are unable to finish an 11-man game or a season because you have lack of players, you will be your 8-man for the next classification cycle.
That makes sense.
And that's when getting to where Orono recently dropped from varsity status to junior varsity before the season started. They are not subject to that because they made the move before they actually played a game. So they will be playing a junior varsity schedule this season with the hopes of being back in 11-man next year.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to realignment. We had some of the most radical realignment in Maine high school football history this past offseason. Your league, coach, is now 11 teams. There's 11 teams in the Pine Tree Conference North, Class B, and 11 teams in the South, with a lot of teams from Class A moving down. What are your thoughts on the way your league, your class looks now?
Yeah, it's just totally different. It's just odd to say, and I talk to friends or college, they say Portland's in Class B. It just, this doesn't make sense. It just sounds like, that has to be a mistake, and the numbers are what they are, and the MPA, in an effort to, I guess, eliminate some blowouts in the playoffs or in state championship games in particular, reducing the Class A field down to 8, just seems odd. It's 8, and then it's 22 in B and however many in C. On the surface, it just kind of seems like an odd thing to do. Common sense might be 20, 20, and 20 in every class, but obviously they're worried about player safety. They're worried about blowouts and some other stuff. And I just think there's never going to be a perfect situation. No. So whether it was 8, at one point there was going to be 22 in A, and then they went back to 14 and down to 8. So no matter where they set the line, someone's going to be upset, somebody's going to be happy. And I don't think it's the MPA's job to create a scenario where every team going into every year feels like they have a legitimate shot to win the state championship. I've coached many seasons where, a goal would have been, let's make the playoffs. Let's win a playoff game. Some years, maybe I think we can win a state championship. But I think some teams now, probably in all sports, but I think they listen to it most in football, where a coach says, wow, we just can't compete. I lost my first 21 games as an assistant coach at Cony, right? And so if there was a Class E then, we might have, we belonged in that then. So, I think the stuff is cyclical. But the MPA, in an effort to just kind of solve all the problems, it came up with this, and we'll see how long it lasts, and we'll see some of the implications, as the season progresses.
Yeah, I hope it's a one-year thing, because I wrote this back in April when it was passed, and I'll say it now, it just doesn't pass the smell test for me to have schools with 900 and more students playing Class B. Class B was never meant to be a dumping ground for schools in Class A that can't compete against the big schools right now, which are Thornton Academy, Bonnie Eagle, and Scarborough. A decade ago, nobody wanted to play against Cheverus. They were just historically a great team, just ripped through a couple state championship games.
Or Bangor in the North.
Or Bangor in the North. Now Bangor is barely getting by in Class A. So you're right, Coach. This stuff does run in cycles, and 10 years from now we'll be talking about nobody wants to play school, whatever.
Cony.
Cony. Yeah, we'll go with Cony.
Up here, it's Cony.
Yeah. So I can't see with Portland, with a freshman class of 275 or whatever, being a Class B school. I'm sorry that whatever demographics they have is no longer conducive to kids coming out for football. But
I lived there for 6 years.
It's just not
didn't feel like a Class
problem.
B community. Portland is a thriving up-tempo, and so for them to have two schools in B, and I don't, I know the coach Jason McLeod, he didn't ask for this. It's just kind of how it shook out, and some people made overtures about why they shouldn't be in A or B, but I think coaches, for the most part, stayed out of it, and then we're going to coach the schedule you get and see what happens at the end of the year.
Yeah. It does sound like, it does sound like it's a little too, trying to stay away from the idea of there being haves and have-nots, when that's just kind of like you said, just a cycle of sports. Yeah. It's it's just because you are in the middle of a down stretch doesn't mean we need to drop down and leave the league. You just take your lumps, and eventually things start to come through. Like you said, all those teams have cycled through. Great teams have had tough luck, and teams that were struggling through rose to the top. So it does seem like an overreaction to it.
Portland played in 3 of the last 4 state championship games.
Sure.
I'm sorry to pick on Portland, but
Yeah, they've been really good in A North and haven't been as competitive in the state game.
No.
And I think that's where people's attention are. If you're kind of a casual fan, you're going to watch Super Saturday and see those games and go, wow, that
Let me read. I wrote down some scores from state games from past, and you let me know when you think these happened. 52-7.
Recently.
Yeah.
That was 2006, Mountain Valley over Morris in Class B.
All right.
55-0. That was Winslow beating Wells in 1993. 65-13.
That is Chevrolet in 85.
Yes.
That is Chevrolet in 1985.
So
yes.
the point is,
I know that one.
Give Coach Lippert a gold star.
Yes, thank you
the
very
point
much.
is,
I think I went over
blowouts in state games are nothing new, and I don't know why it's a big deal suddenly. I've got ideas, but I'll keep them to myself for now.
Well, I mean, it's not so much are there blowouts as much as are there blowouts across the board. I think that's when people look at it and they say every one of our games.
But I mean, last year Nokomis and Freiburg in Class C was it was a great game.
Yeah.
If you like defensive football, everyone complains about lack of scoring, but 13-12 was a fantastic game.
But A wasn't close, B wasn't close, D wasn't close. Wells didn't lose a game in Class D. Now maybe you could say that was more one team that was in a bad one team that was in the wrong league versus an indication of Class D's competition as a whole. But it was 3 out of 4 games where it was pretty much over by 5 minutes into the game.
Yeah. Well, let's start looking at the different classes, starting with Class D, which Drew in the South, particularly with Wells moving up to C now, looks kind of more wide open. Who are some of the contenders you see?
Yeah, it looks like it's back to the way it was 3-4 years ago, and I think some of our teams are positioned pretty well. Winthrop, Monmouth, and Halldale look like a team that's really going to be a team to watch in that league because, Coach Dave St. Hilaire sounded excited talking about that team in the preview. But there's a reason he was excited. They have a lot of speed coming back. They have their quarterback coming back in Keegan Choate. Defense with Jevin Smith is a really good disruptive defensive end and running back. They just kind of have some really good players coming back at all levels, offense and defense. So that's and again, I don't know if I mentioned it already or not, but just the speed that they have on offense is going to be tough for most teams to match up with, especially at Class D where depth is hard to come by. Right. And I think Oak Hill could be a tough team. They got their quarterback come back as well, and Gavin Rostron, and it felt like last year they were ahead of the curve. They played with some freshmen, sophomore starters, and that was supposed to be a year of, a tough year where they would kind of be, maybe having some growing pains there.
Sure.
But they figured it out towards the end of the season. I think it was a really good coaching job by Stacey Doucette to get the most out of those players. And now look, they have people coming back in both offense and defense that are now positioned to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
kids who made that deep playoff run.
Rostron's got a ton of experience as a junior. He's played since his freshman year. He's a really good athlete, 3-sport athlete. And Sam Lindsay's one of the more underrated players. He's a great wide receiver. I think they probably hand it to him a little bit on jet sweeps and stuff, but a really, really good athlete. And like you said, Coach Doucette's done a nice job. And, they are committed to the spread. They throw the ball around. They run out of it, obviously, but they've got really good athletes. And Winthrop Monmouth is really good. So both those teams, should be really good locally. And I think statewide they got a chance to compete.
I remember last year he was saying, we're so new in the offensive line. We're so new in the defensive line. We got some small kids who are needing to start.
That's just Stason. That's what he says all the time.
But towards the end of the season, they started to figure it out, and now those kids are sophomores and juniors.
Yeah.
And more positioned for that. And now the line is a strength for them. In addition to players like Lindsey, Rostron, Liam Rodriguez is a good wide receiver for them. So that could be they're not built the way what the Monmouth is, I don't think, in terms of the speed overall, but I think that they're going to be a team that can, if the game is more 21-17, plays longer lines. Yeah. And Lisbon is a team that
you can never count out Lisbon.
Yeah, they're always competitive. I mean, they were competitive last year. They went to the championship game 3 years ago when they played MCI.
Yeah.
So always there. Got to figure they'll be there again.
Yeah, Seth Lehman going to quarterback. He replaces Francis. He's been a receiver for him.
That's a big loss for him.
A huge loss, but Seth's a good athlete. Throws the ball well, throws it on time. So I think they'll be able to pick up in the pass game. I'm not sure he's quite the physical runner that Francis was, but they've done a nice job down there, and they just fill in athletes. That's a program that's never really worried about numbers. They've got 40-plus every year.
Sure.
Whether there's 250 kids in the school or they're going to have their football players, and that community loves football.
Yeah. Another community that loves football is Madison. New coach and Paul Withy, who won 3 state championships at Foxcroft Academy, takes over for a team that lost a lot of players. Might take them a few weeks to kind of get used to some new systems. They're not going to be running the spread and pistol that Coach Scott Franzosi took to Mount Blue, who we'll talk about a little later because they're your opponent this week. But I think Madison will be in the mix for a playoff spot, I would think. In the North, it looks very top-heavy. Foxcroft Academy, Bucksport is supposed to be very good, but then maybe Mattinock and Mount View as the next tier. And then with the loss of Orono and some schools that are really struggling with numbers, I think that league kind of drops off quickly.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the same position D South was, again, a few years ago when what team was it that dropped out? Was it Boothbay that dropped out? And
Boothbay or Telstar.
Yeah, the teams had to play a 7-game schedule. It's same thing happening here.
Yeah, some of the schools have been kind of juggling the schedule. I think I heard Mount Desert Island's going to play Old Town twice now because they lost a non-conference game with Orono.
A home-and-home series.
Yeah.
There you go.
Let's move on to Class C. In the South, I think newcomer Wells is going to have to be in the mix, and I think Levitt might be the team to beat with Wyatt Hathaway back at quarterback.
Levitt is the team to beat. Let me apply some pressure to Mike Hathaway. Good friend of mine. They're loaded. I mean, Wyatt at quarterback is kind of under appreciated because they're loaded with senior skill kids. They've got Cam Jordan at tight end. They've got the other 6'5" Cole Morin at tight end, both 6'5" guys. I don't know what Mike gets those guys, but we'd like a few. They've got the Calder twins at wide receiver and the Slaw and Mark Herman. They're loaded at the skill position. They're loaded up front. They're really, really good. And I know they have a little bitter taste losing to Freiburg, what they would consider to be early last year in their playoff run. And that group has been together. We played them 7-on-7. I run a camp with Mike, and those kids were all there. And they are really good. Barring injury, barring some unforeseen things, they will be there in November, no question.
Do you put much stock in the whole wanting to avenge losses and stuff like that, and that sort of the bad taste in the mouth that people talk about? Because Levitt had that 2 years ago. They were number 1 seed and lost to Gardner in the playoffs. This is
true.
2 straight years where they were stopped short of where they wanted to go.
Well, Cony did the same thing. We weren't the 1 seed, but we've lost twice as the favorite in the last 2 years to Brunswick. So only in that, I think it motivates you to lift and run a little bit. I think, if you're playing Freiburg in the playoffs, I'm not sure it's revenge against that particular team. I think it's we ended our season too early last year, and so it's a little easier to run that 10th sprint, as compared to, if you were just, coming off a state championship, maybe you're not quite as hungry. I think it motivates you a little bit as a reminder of maybe this would have been the difference last year. And we tell that to the kids, here and there. So, I'm not sure they want Freiburg necessarily. They just want to make a run through November because it's ended early twice for them, and we're in the same boat as well.
In the North, Nokomis, defending state champs, graduated, I think, 13 seniors who all contributed a lot. So I think the Warriors might take a step back. And the fact that they don't have a home field this year. They've got to play home games at Lawrence High School in Fairfield. That's a good half-hour drive from Nokomis just for a home game. It's got to wear on you. You guys had the home game at Lewiston in the playoffs last year. Was, you'd hate to make say that was a reason, but was that a factor, getting the kids on a bus?
I think it's just a little different. We didn't travel very well. It was kind of an overcast, kind of cold night. So if it was at home, I think our crowd was better. It wasn't the difference in the game, In fact, it's a much better field. Field turf's better suited for us than what we had for skilled players last year. We just didn't play very well, to be quite honest, and lost there. But every single game being on the road, you have to get on a bus to go to every game. That's just got to wear on you, right? We have to walk down a hill at home and you're there, So getting on a bus, traveling 30 minutes for your closest game has got to be, over the course of a season, just a little irritating.
Yeah, they host.
Where are they practicing? Are they practicing?
They have a practice field at the school they can use. But I was talking to Waterville coach Matt Gilly, and he's like, "Yeah, we love playing at Nokomis this year. We've got a quicker ride than they do."
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
In the North, I think Winslow might become the team to beat again. Black Raiders only graduated 4 players. they were all talented players, but they returned kids at a lot of different skill positions. And Herman, despite the loss of quarterback Garrett Trask, who you saw at the Lobster Bowl, is considered by many to be a favorite. And I think MCI will still be in the mix.
Yeah. I coached with Tom Bertrand from MCI at the Lobster Bowl and Kyle Gallant from Herman. And they both, they lose some skill guys. Obviously, Garrett Trask was kind of the center of their entire...
We just lost our light.
There you go.
Apologize for that.
Yeah. A little dim-witted. But Garrett Trask did everything for them offensively, but I think they might be a little more balanced this year. They've got a junior quarterback with some size that throws the ball more than Garrett did. So, Kyle was excited, and Tom's always excited about what he's got in the kind of his energy in that program, so that they don't go away. They might not be as good as they were 2 or 3 years ago, but MCI will be there.
Yeah, sure. MCI's got some holes to fill in the backfield, but they have Ryan Friend, who's back at quarterback. He's a junior, third-year starter.
Yeah.
And the lights out again, and it's back. And they've got, to replace Seth Buzzle, who was just a monster on both sides of the ball. But they have another Buzzle. I think it's in the school charter. They always have to have a Buzzle on the football team.
One Buzzle.
So I think
they don't have when they drop to 8-man.
Yeah, right. I think they will be a contender.
Yeah.
Let's go to Class B, the new 11-team Pine Tree Conference Class B, Coach. Some old rivalries are gone. You guys played Lawrence in the preseason rather than a regular season game, but you got some new rivalries, maybe with the Falmouth Greeley team. And what do you know about this Mount Blue team that you're going to be opening against?
Yeah, Mount Blue. They returned a bunch of skilled players. They got a couple big offensive linemen. Eddie Hebert's back at left tackle. So they've got and he said it. Scott said it in the article that they've got the personnel to be pretty successful right away. Sometimes when you're getting hired at a job, it's a result of the other coach didn't do very well, and the numbers are down, and you haven't had success. And they were kind of on the rise. They were 4-4, made the playoffs. Challenged Lawrence in the amounts to a quarterfinal game, and so they've got the talent there, and new quarterback I think playing for them, but
Hunter Meeks,
played
a little bit last year.
I think it's a junior. I think it's Jack Keering or something like that that's actually playing.
Okay,
at least based on what we saw last week. So they're going to be a good team. And the new offense takes a little bit to get acclimated for your personnel, but I think they've got the athletes to do that. So they're going to be right there in Class B, with amongst the kind of usual suspects, so to say.
Yeah, and Drew Gardner's back in the league after a few years in Class C.
Yeah, and Joe White, the coach there, was saying some of the same things Stason was saying about his team, where just some good experience coming back on all levels, really strong on the lines especially. But they have the quarterback back in Sean Michaud, who was looking like a real playmaker last year until he got hurt. Didn't make it back until the playoff game, and then he only made it back at receiver. But he's going to be a really good starting point for that team, and they sound like they're going to be pretty competitive. Guys like Blaze Tripp in the secondary, he's been a good safety for them for the last couple of years. Ashton Engel in the line, so it's a good mix coming back. You just wonder how competitive they'll be going from C to B. There's just that unknown factor. Last time they were in Class B North, they had a tough season. They go to Class C and they're in the playoffs 2 straight years. So. Yeah,
their personnel's a lot better now than it was when they were last in Class B. So they're going to be good. They've got a ton of kids out. They've got 70 kids out. They're in the spread offense, offensively, I've heard anyway, which for Gardner people will be a culture shock a little bit. But, they're athletic as can be. Ashton Engel's an incredibly explosive defensive end, like really, really tough to block. When he knifes into B-gap, he's tough. They lose Garrett Mayhew and the Appleby kid. They had some good players on defense that really started and played a lot of minutes for them, but they're going to be in the mix. There's no doubt.
And they lost a lot of their running backs. They had a really good running back core there. Nate Malinowski was the kid that ran for over 300 yards against Morrison in the playoffs. Sure. And so, they have Hunter Land's going to be one of the big running backs there to kind of carry that load. We'll see how he adjusts to the starting role, but like you said, it sounds like they're more excited about their prospects now than their last year in Class B. And Coach White was saying that they learned how to win, and a lot of people use that phrase, but they really kind of gained a sense of confidence what they could accomplish the last 2 years going to the playoffs. And he doesn't think that there's going to be much of a question that they'll be able to translate that to Class B in terms of at a competitive level.
Sure. The 2 teams that played for the conference championship last year, Brunswick and Lawrence, imagine they're both in the mix, and Brunswick might be the favorite again.
Yeah, Brunswick returns everyone skill position-wise and adds back in Owen Richardson, who broke his collarbone week 1 against Falmouth last year on a late hit. And so, they were really competitive without him, and he's, in the conversation for a Fitzpatrick Trophy, finalist this year. I think he's a 1,500-yard anyway running back, and he's really tough, and I think he's playing, inside linebacker or defensive end on the defensive side. So they bring back, a quarterback, 2 or 3 other running backs that filled in his place last year now, on the bench. So a good problem to have. And lines, a little bit new, but Brunswick graduates a ton of linemen, and they just find new guys. So I think they're going to be really, really tough to beat. And they've had a lot of success winning. You talk about winning breeds more winning, and that's what they've had there. They've had a lot of success, including last year. They're probably on paper right now the favorite, I would say.
Yeah, Lawrence returns a lot of players. Pretty much the backfield.
Yeah, Coombs a quarterback.
Not everyone. They've got a lot of guys who saw a lot of time.
Yeah, Coombs a quarterback, and Nickerson's a good wide receiver for them. They're always sound defensively, and their schemes are good offensively. So, and a team that I think early in the year somebody might see and go, okay, I'm not sure they're as good this year, and they just kind of get better as the year progresses. And last year they make it to the final, the Northern Maine final, I guess. And so with Coach Hersom and Lindloff running the show there, they progress as the season goes on. That's a sign of a good team.
Yeah, once they shore up the line, I think they'll be in the mix.
Yeah, I agree.
And Skowhegan has to replace one of the best quarterbacks in the state, Marcus Christopher. Always tough to do that. They've replaced one of the best quarterbacks in the state with Marcus, though, a couple of years ago with Garrett McSweeney.
Yeah.
So seems to be a quarterback factory in Skowhegan these days.
Yeah, they've got a couple of kids. They've got a junior, and then they got an incoming freshman, Adam Savage. That's a really good player. So, I'm not sure what direction they're going to go.
Sounds like the junior Green's going to get the first crack at it.
Cam Green. Yeah, he's a big kid, got a big arm, good baseball player. So it's a matter, are they going to trust him and go with him? The freshman's kind of nipping at his heels, but they've got some skilled kids back, and they've been really sound defensively with Ryan Libby, kind of shoring things up in the last few years. So they'll be in the picture, I think, as well.
Messalonski's got a new coach in Walter Polke, who had been at Maranacook. After coming off an 0-8 season, I think they're just kind of looking to get better. Got the gorgeous new facility there at Messalonski, so we'll just see progression from the Eagles.
And this is Coach Polke's second time in 3 years he's taken over a rebuilding team that's coming off a winless season. So he has some experience turning programs around and kind of getting a football base.
He's the Bill Parcells of Maine high school football. Yeah. Just quick fix. All right, let's get to Class A. Let's go to B South real quick. Marshwood. Can anyone beat Marshwood?
Well, I'll believe when I see it.
Yeah. Kennebunk, maybe. I don't know.
Kennebunk, maybe. I don't know about Portland. I don't know.
Portland last
Deering,
year. South Portland.
Yeah, I think Portland
Chevers,
last year probably could. I know they lost a lot of key contributors, but they're in the picture. So I don't know. That's a great question. And I'm fascinated to see TA Marshwood week 2. That's kind of the game that people have debated on MBR. Like, hey, could Marshwood win the Class A state championship? And it's always been kind of conjecture. And now we get to see, in week 2. I've heard it's not Marshwood's best team, but they're the best coach in Maine, and they just kind of keep turning out athletes. So that'll be a great game. I'm excited to see that.
Won 4 of the last 5 state championships, and been in 5 out of the last 7 or something. Yeah. So they're until further notice, they're the team to beat in B as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and Kennebunk played them tough last year, beat them 14-13, then lost 14-13 in the playoffs, and they graduated a ton of kids. But Coach Rafferty does a great job. I know they've always got high numbers, and they played Brunswick pretty tough in the scrimmage, or beat Brunswick maybe. So I think those 2 teams, and then we'll see how Deering, South Portland kind of fit into there after that.
Okay. Go ahead. Just to go back to Class B North for your team for a second. A lot of experience, or a lot of players that were on the defensive side, losing a lot of those starters. But I remember talking to you earlier, and you said there's that concern element because you wonder just who's going to be taking those spots and everything. But there's also the excitement element because you're going to see just what this new Cony defense looks like.
Yeah, no doubt.
Too.
Yeah, no, we graduated 10 starters on defense and 9 starters on offense. So that's a lot of guys to replace. Our numbers are strong. We've got a really pretty good junior class, but the kids that are starting now have really not played very much. As far as varsity minutes are concerned. So some of them are going from really not playing much at all, other than special teams, to starting both ways. Friday night at Mount Blue. So there's a great unknown there about how they're going to respond in that moment. But again, it's a little concerning in one way, but it's also exciting. Jake Genesio, for example, is an outside linebacker for us that was kind of on the fringe, maybe coming in. He's played really well in the preseason. He's starting at linebacker Friday night. So some of these guys that have been waiting their turn, you can't base your opinion of them in their sophomore year when their motivation level might be a little down. It's you hope it's not, but you go, Matt and Mike Wozniak are ahead of me. Like a linebacker, it's a Tuesday practice. Am I giving 100%? It's hard to tell sometimes. And now it's their time to shine, and some of them have really, risen to the occasion. And, Friday night's the ultimate test and the rest of the season. So, we have the opposite problem. Last year we had all the skill and all of our linemen back, and we didn't know who the quarterback was. Right. Now we know who the quarterback is. We lost our top 6 or 7 receivers as far as catches and yards are concerned. And we have, one starter back on the offensive line. So the question is, what would you rather have? Like all the skill on the line and don't know the cue, or you got the cue and you got to build around it?
You're like a science experiment.
Yeah, probably most people want the 10 starters and find a cue, but Cony, sometimes we like having the cue. So it's an interesting problem to have, but I think we've got the personnel to be pretty competitive, and we'll find out a lot starting in 48 hours.
How good is that starting point piece with the quarterback? I mean, just how much falls into place just if you have that guy at quarterback?
Well, I think it helps. I think sometimes teams focus on we got to find 5 offensive linemen, but sometimes a great running back, you don't necessarily have to block all the. You can miss a block and they make that guy miss. So like if you have skill guys that can make your line look pretty good, life is good. So you can have the best line in the world, and if you don't have everybody who can throw or catch, it doesn't really matter. So I think knowing we've got 2 quarterbacks really that can run our system pretty effectively is good, and we've got other kids in the pipeline that we feel pretty good about as well. It's just a matter of finding the personnel at wide receiver. If Dakota Andow's not at quarterback, he's going to play receiver. If Riley weren't at quarterback, he would be at receiver, and finding some other guys to fill in there. And they performed pretty well in the preseason, but we'll see Friday night live and in color what that looks like.
I got a chance to see that scrimmage. Adrian Larrabee and Aiden Colomb, not two guys who aren't really tested so much, but guys who you're probably pretty excited about what they offer in terms of athleticism.
Yeah. Adrian played corner last year, but probably the least known starter on our defense. We had some pretty good guys, but Adrian was second team all conference. He's going to start at receiver for us, and Aiden Colomb's a sophomore who probably set a state record for touchdowns last year because he played in every freshman and JV game. So he scored like 20 with freshmen and 10 with JV. So it's a lot of minutes he played last year, and so he's going to get some touches for us offensively, and he'll play outside linebacker, kind of strong safety position for us defensively. So both those kids have put in time in the weight room. They were like lifting partners for the whole spring, and it was great. They brought out the best in each other, a senior and a sophomore, and that's a culture we've tried to create. And those 2 are kind of an example of kids that are getting the chance as a result.
Okay, Class A. Thornton Academy, Scarborough, Bonnie Eagle. Whose turn is this year? If we're going to keep the rotation going, I guess it's Bonnie Eagles. But
I'll go Bonnie Eagle. I like Bonnie Eagle's personnel. I like Bonnie Eagle.
Just to change it up, then I'll go Thornton.
I guess that gives me Scarborough with Jarrett Flake, the fastest player in the state.
Yeah, that's not a bad guy to have.
How much are we wagering on this?
We'll wager whoever wins gets to fix the lights.
Okay, that's a surprise.
Can anybody else of this 8-team league play with those 3? Can an Oxford Hills or a Lewiston or anybody sneak in there?
Yeah,
Sanford,
I think Oxford
maybe?
Hills is pretty good. I mean, their current sophomore and junior classes, I think, might have just big numbers, and there's strength in numbers, and that those groups have had success. So I know they graduated a ton of kids. Colton Carson was as good a quarterback as there was at Maine last year. Right. The Luska kid who was a linebacker, running back. They graduated a lot of really skilled kids. Parker LaFrance, who was at the Lobster Bowl. But I think they've created enough depth where they're going to fill in the coach's kid as a quarterback. Coach's kids at quarterback can't fail propositions.
Usually.
Sometimes that's not the case. But, so I think they're going to be, can they beat TA this year? I'm not sure. But I really think they're able to be in the mix. I don't think they're going to go back to, being, a doormat like they were for a few years.
Definitely going in the right direction.
No question. And Mark's done a
Portland
great job.
all they could handle in the regional final last year.
Fumbled it, in overtime, or they're playing in the state championship. So I think Mark's done a great job developing depth, and I think they're going to be there. And I think Sanford, I've heard good things about the quarterback, and they might not have the numbers that TA and Bonnie Eagle do, but they've got enough skilled kids, I think, for this 1 year where they might have a chance to kind of surprise somebody.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with our technical difficulties with the lighting. We'll try to do better next week. Be sure to read the Central Maine newspapers, Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel all season for all the best high school football coverage. And be sure to check out Friday's edition where we have a special thing we're going to do, the all-decade team and the teams of the decade. So do you have any thoughts on some of the best players or teams you saw the last 10 years in Central Maine?
The best players I've seen, Ben Lucas comes to mind quickly.
Sure.
Spencer
Your quarterback.
Carey, my guy Ben. Spencer Carey was a nightmare. If Ben threw 10 picks in his career, Spencer picked like 7 of them. Chandler Shostak, I know I'm a little Cony-centric right now. Mount Blue. Who's Mount Blue had?
Well, not great Mount Blue team in 2012.
Jordan Whitney. Yeah, okay. Brunswick's too
the
far.
biggest
south
Fitzy
for us.
snub in
Yes,
the awards history, probably.
Yeah, those immediately come to mind.
Yeah. Bradley Jackson was a linebacker on that
Oh,
team.
yeah. They had some good players. So, best teams. Cony in 2013, I'm going to start with. That one sticks in my head. It's Lawrence, I was 08, 07. But the 2012 Lawrence team was really good.
Yeah, just right
Winslow's had a bunch of good ones with Hapworth here when he scored 14 touchdowns against Levitt in the state game. So I don't know. I'm not as well researched. I know more about Cony, not necessarily everything else like you guys do.
Well, we hope it'll bring up a lot of debate and a lot of memories, so be sure to check that out Friday. Be sure to enjoy whatever game you get to this weekend on opening week, and we'll see you next week on Gridiron Gurus.